Captain Kang Deho stood on the bridge of the Taeguk Pioneer, staring at the stars through the wide viewport. He had been in space for 20 years, but the beauty of it never got old. His ship was not a military vessel. It was a research ship, designed to explore unknown regions of space and catalog what they found. 47 people called this ship home, and Deho was responsible for every single one of them. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Park Ji-won from her station. She was the communications officer, a young woman with sharp eyes and quick fingers that danced across her console. "It's a signal." Repeating pattern. Mathematical sequences. Deho walked over to her station, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. "Mathematical sequences? You mean like a message?" "Yes, sir. It's broadcasting on every frequency we can detect. Someone is trying very hard to be heard." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. In over 150 years of space exploration, humanity had never encountered another intelligent species. They had found bacteria, ancient ruins on dead worlds, but never anyone alive to talk to. Until now, can you decode it? Deho asked. Ji-won shook her head. "Not immediately. But I can run it through the linguistics AI. Dr. Choi Hana should look at this too." Dr. Choi Hana arrived within minutes. She was the ship's xenolinguist, a specialist in theoretical alien languages. For most of her career, her job had been theoretical. Now it was very real. She leaned over Ji-won's shoulder, her eyes scanning the data. "This is incredible. Give me 3 days. I think I can crack this." Those 3 days felt like 3 years. The crew went about their duties, but everyone was thinking about the signal. What would the message say? Who sent it? Were they friendly or dangerous? Deho held meetings with his senior staff, preparing for every possibility. When Hana finally called him to the communications room, her face was pale. "You need to hear this, Captain." She played the translated message. A voice filtered through the translation software, spoke in halting but understandable words. "We are dying. Our world burns. The swarm consumes all. 12 cycles until extinction. Any who receive this, please. We are the Vela. Coordinates follow. Help us." The room was silent. Then everyone started talking at once. "We have to help them," said one officer. "We're not equipped for this," said another. "We don't even know what the swarm is," said a third. Deho raised his hand and everyone fell silent. "How far away are they?" 6 days at maximum jump speed, said pilot Han Minho. "The coordinates point to a system in the Helios expanse." 6 days, Deho repeated. He looked at his chief engineer, Bay Taman. "Can the ship handle it?" "The ship can handle anything," Taman said. "But Captain, we're explorers. We have mining equipment and a few weapons for emergencies. If there's a real threat there, we're not prepared to fight." Deho understood. This was not their mission. Nobody would blame them for reporting the signal and continuing their exploration. A military ship could be sent instead, but that would take weeks, maybe months. The message said 12 cycles until extinction. They didn't know how long a cycle was, but it didn't sound like much time. "We're going," Deho said. "We didn't come out here just to map stars. If someone needs help, we answer the call. Prepare the ship for jump. We leave in 2 hours." The crew scrambled to prepare. Yoon Jae-ho, the security chief, gathered his 12-person team and started checking their equipment. They had 3 actual rifles meant for defending against pirates, some plasma cutters for mining, and various tools that could be used as weapons if needed. It wasn't much, but it was what they had. Dr. Nam Subin, the medical officer, prepared supplies even though she had no idea what alien biology would be like. Would their medicine even work on the Vela? She didn't know, but she prepared anyway. During the 6-day journey, they received more transmissions. The messages were desperate, increasingly frantic. The Vela explained who they were and what they faced. They were a peaceful species of 400 million individuals living on a low-gravity world called Velnara. Something called the Swarm had attacked them 6 months ago. It was a hive-minded species of insect-like creatures that ate everything organic. The Vela couldn't stop them. Why can't they fight back? Jae-ho asked during one briefing. Hana explained what the Vela had told them. They say their biology makes them unable to hurt other living things. When they try, they experience severe trauma. They literally cannot fight. They can only run. The crew struggled to understand this. How could an entire species be unable to defend itself? On Earth, everything fought for survival. It was the basic law of nature. When the Teguk Pioneer finally dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vela system, they saw horror. 3 of the system's 5 planets looked dead. Velnara, the 4th planet, was covered in dark masses that moved and writhed like living shadows. The swarm was visible even from space. "My God," whispered Minho. "There are so many of them." A damaged shuttle approached their ship, moving slowly and leaking atmosphere. They guided it into the docking bay. When the airlock opened, the humans got their first look at aliens. The Vela were beautiful in their own way. They stood about 4 feet tall with iridescent carapaces that shimmered in the light. They had 4 delicate arms and large, multifaceted eyes that seemed to hold endless depth. 3 of them stumbled out of the shuttle, and the leader collapsed immediately. Dr. Nam rushed forward with her medical team. They carefully lifted the alien and brought it to the medical bay. Through translation devices, the alien spoke. Its name was Scholar Tivanal. "You came," Tivanal whispered. "We sent our plea to 100 stars. You are the only ones who answered. But you must flee. You cannot comprehend what you face. The swarm has taken our colonies, our stations, everything. We are all that remain." Captain Deho knelt beside the medical bed. "We came to help. Tell us what we're facing." Tivanal's large eyes seemed to focus on him with difficulty. "You should not have come. You do not understand. The swarm cannot be stopped. They adapt, they multiply, they consume. We have tried everything. We cannot fight them. We can only watch as they take everything we love." "You can't fight them," Deho said slowly. "But maybe we can." Tivanal made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret. "Confusion, perhaps, or disbelief. You are smaller than us. Your ship is alone. How could you possibly succeed where 400 million of us have failed?" Deho didn't have a good answer for that. He didn't know if they could succeed, but he knew they had to try. "Because you asked for help," he said simply. "And we came. Now let's figure out how to save your people." Over the next hours, the Vela explained everything. They showed the humans images of the swarm, horrible creatures that were part insect, part machine, all nightmare. Each one was the size of a large dog with bladed limbs and mandibles that could cut through metal. They reproduced exponentially, turning consumed biomass into more of themselves. The Vela civilization was 40,000 years old, but they had never developed weapons. They had advanced technology for shields, energy manipulation, and faster-than-light communication, but nothing designed to hurt another living being. War was not just foreign to them, it was biologically impossible. Security Chief Jeho looked at the data and shook his head. "The numbers are impossible. There are hundreds of millions of them. We're 47 people with limited weapons. Then we don't fight all of them," said Kim Yuri, a xenobiologist who had volunteered for combat training during the journey. "We buy time. We help evacuate. We slow them down." Captain Deho looked at his crew. They were scientists, engineers, researchers. They had signed up to explore the stars, not fight monsters, but every single one of them had the same determined look in their eyes. "We'll need volunteers for ground operations," Deho said. 39 hands went up immediately. People argued about who would get to go. Deho selected his teams carefully. Jeho would lead ground operations with 15 personnel. Taman would stay on the ship to keep it running. Dr. Nam would establish a field hospital on the surface. As the shuttles prepared to descend to Velnara, Scholar Tivanal watched the humans with something like awe. "Why would you do this for us?" "You just learned we existed days ago." Communications Officer G1 smiled sadly. "Because you asked for help, and because if we don't stand against monsters, who will?" The 3 shuttles descended toward the dark, writhing mass of the swarm that covered the planet below. The humans were going to war. The shuttles landed in the Vela capital city of Shantara. 15 million Vela huddled behind massive energy shields that flickered and sparked. The shields were failing. Everyone could see it. The swarm pressed against the barriers like a living tide of nightmares, and the sound was overwhelming. Clicking, scraping, a low vibration that made human teeth ache. Security Chief Yoon Jae-ho stepped out of the shuttle first, wearing a reinforced environmental suit. His team followed, each carrying whatever weapons they had managed to assemble. They looked small and inadequate against the writhing mass beyond the shields. "Stay in formation," Jae-ho ordered. "We set up defensive positions at the shield generators. If they break through, we funnel them into kill zones." His team moved with nervous efficiency. Most of them had never been in combat. Kim Yuri, the xenobiologist, checked her plasma cutter with shaking hands. Oh Daewon, a mining technician, tested his improvised nail gun. Lee Hee-jin, one of the 3 actual security officers, looked the calmest of them all. The Vela watched from behind protective barriers. They had never seen beings prepare for violence before. To them, it looked like the humans were preparing to hurt themselves. Scholar Tivanal approached Jeho carefully. 2 other Vela accompanied them. Military Coordinator Breshik and Engineer Pelshaw. We must explain, Tivanal said through the translator. You need to understand what you face. They brought the humans to a command center where holographic displays showed the swarm's advance. The images were horrifying. The swarm creatures were each the size of a large dog, covered in black chitinous armor mixed with mechanical components. They had multiple blade-like limbs and mandibles that dripped with acid. They arrived 6 months ago, Breshik explained, from deep space. We detected them too late. By the time we understood the threat, they had already consumed our outer colonies. How many have you killed? Asked Lee Hye-jin. The 3 Vela looked at each other with confusion. Killed? We have killed none.
We cannot or will not,
Jeho asked. Cannot, Tivanal said firmly. Our species evolved without predators. Our world had abundant resources. We never needed to develop the capacity for violence. When we try to harm another living thing, even in self-defense, we experience immediate psychological collapse. We freeze, we cannot function. Those who have tried to use weapons became catatonic. The human team stared in disbelief. You're telling me 400 million of you couldn't fight because your biology won't let you? Said Daewon. We are ashamed, Pelshaw whispered. We have watched our people die for months because we are too weak to protect them. You're not weak, said Kim Yuri quietly. You're just different. Your evolution took a different path than ours. Jeho pulled up Earth's history on a portable display. He showed them images from human history, wars, weapons, soldiers. This is what humans are. We evolved on a world 3 times heavier than yours. We had predators that hunted us. We had diseases, disasters, resource scarcity. We learned to fight because if we didn't, we died. The Vela looked at the images with visible distress. You have killed your own kind? Your own species? Yes, Jeho said bluntly. Millions of times. Billions if you count all of history. It's not something we're proud of. But it means we know how to fight. And right now, that's what you need. That night, Captain Daeho called a meeting aboard the ship. His senior staff gathered in the briefing room. The reality of their situation was becoming clear. The swarm has hundreds of millions of units on Velnara alone, Daeho said. We have 47 people and limited weapons. We cannot win militarily. Then what can we do? Asked Bae-Taman. We buy time, said Kim Yuri. We evacuate as many Vela as possible to their outer moon colonies. We use guerrilla tactics to slow the swarm's advance. Every hour we hold is thousands more people saved. And we call for help, added Ji-won. We send out a modified distress signal. Include our coordinates, tactical data, everything we've learned. Maybe someone else will answer like we did. The plan was desperate, but it was the only option they had. Jeho would take 15 people to the surface. They would conduct hit-and-run attacks using the urban terrain to their advantage. Meanwhile, the ship would coordinate evacuations with the Vela fleet. Anyone who goes to the surface probably won't come back, Daeho said quietly. I'm not ordering anyone. This is volunteer only. Every single person in the room volunteered. Then they argued about who should get to go. The next morning, the eastern shield perimeter failed. A wave of swarm units poured through the gap, thousands of them moving with terrible coordination. The humans opened fire, plasma cutters designed to slice through asteroid rock carved through swarm bodies. Improvised explosives detonated at choke points. The industrial nail gun fired titanium spikes that punched through chitin and metal. But what shocked the Vela most was not the weapons. It was the humans themselves. The humans didn't freeze. They didn't panic. They fought with cold precision, covering each other, falling back in coordinated patterns, using every advantage the terrain offered. They funneled the swarm into narrow passages and killed them by the hundreds. Lee Hee-jin held a corridor alone for 5 minutes, her rifle firing in controlled bursts. Daewon used his nail gun to collapse a building entrance, crushing dozens of swarm units. Kim Yuri, the scientist who had never expected to see combat, targeted swarm neural centers with surgical accuracy. The Vela watched from their shelters in horror. Not horror at the swarm, they had seen that for months. Horror at the humans, they're so small, whispered Tivanol. How can they function while causing harm?
Why aren't they collapsing?
Another Vela, a young one, trembled. They're seeking to harm actively. How? How can any living being do that without breaking? 8 hours of continuous combat passed before the human teams withdrew to secured positions. The Vela approached cautiously, expecting to find the humans suffering the same psychological collapse that afflicted their own people. Instead, they found something they didn't expect. The humans sat in their temporary barracks, and many of them were crying. Li Hijin had her head in her hands, shaking. Her squadmate Shin Woo-jin sat beside her with an arm around her shoulders, saying nothing. Kim Yuri was vomiting in a corner, then wiping her mouth and going back to studying swarm specimens. Dr. Nam treated Oh Daewon's injuries, while both of them had tears running down their faces. Jae-ho addressed his team. What we did today was necessary, but it doesn't have to be easy. Don't let anyone tell you it should be. We carry this weight so they don't have to. Scholar Tivanol watched through the security feed and began to understand. Humans weren't immune to the trauma of violence. They simply had the capacity to function through it. Their trauma came after, not during. They made the choice to act despite the psychological cost. Over the next week, the pattern continued. Human teams conducted guerrilla operations across the city. They couldn't stop the swarm's advance, but they slowed it. Every hour bought meant thousands more Vela evacuated. The humans developed tactics based on swarm behavior. They used Vela energy shields as mobile defensive positions. They targeted swarm distribution nodes to disrupt coordination. They created chemical dead zones that the swarm avoided, but the cost was high. On day 4, they lost their first team member. Jung Sang-hoon, an engineer, was setting demolition charges to collapse a hive cluster. He got the charges planted but couldn't retreat in time. His last transmission was calm. Charges set. Clear the area. It's been an honor. The explosion took out an estimated 50,000 swarm units. It bought the evacuation fleet 6 more hours. The Vela didn't understand sacrifice. They didn't understand why Sang-hoon hadn't run. Scholar Tivanol asked Dr. Choi Hana, who had remained on the ship. Why did he stay? He could have escaped. Because the mission required it, Hana replied, her voice thick with grief. Because 50,000 swarm units not chasing evacuation ships means maybe 100,000 of your people survive. In human mathematics, 1 life for 100,000 is an acceptable trade, but he was a person. He had value beyond mathematics. Yes, and he chose to give that value to your people. That's what makes it sacrifice instead of waste. On day 7, Communications Officer Ji-won finished encoding the modified distress call. It included video footage of the swarm, the Vela's plight, and humanity's response. The message was simple. This is Captain Kang Dae-ho of Earth vessel Taeguk Pioneer. We have encountered an extinction-level threat. The Vela people face annihilation. We are 47 humans doing what we can, but we need help. To any spacefaring civilization receiving this, the Vela asked for help and we answered. We ask you to do the same. The broadcast went out across all frequencies aimed at every star system within 200 light-years. It would take weeks or months to reach anyone, if anyone existed at all. Meanwhile, the evacuation continued. The human ground teams, now down to 13 members, kept fighting. They knew they were buying time with their lives, and they did it anyway, because someone had called for help, and humans had answered. By day 14 on Velnara, everything was falling apart. The swarm had adapted to human tactics, sending larger and more concentrated forces against defensive positions. The hive mind was learning, recognizing patterns, adjusting its approach. What had worked in the first week no longer worked now. Security Chief Yoon Jae-ho stood in what remained of the command post, his left arm in an improvised sling. The arm was broken in 3 places, held together with field medicine and his own stubborn will. Of the 15 people who had originally come to the surface, only 9 could still fight. Dr. Nam Subin's field hospital had been overrun twice. Each time required desperate last stands to retake it. She had stopped counting how many swarm units she had personally killed. The number didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered except buying more time. Kim Yuri coordinated tactics from a damaged building that served as their communications hub. Her xenobiology expertise had become their most valuable weapon. She understood how the swarm thought, how it moved, where its weaknesses were. but understanding the enemy didn't make them any easier to kill. Captain Deho's voice came through the comm system, distorted by interference. Ground team status report. We're holding, Jeho replied, which was technically true if you didn't think too hard about it. Evacuation numbers? 67 million Vela evacuated to the outer moons. Approximately 13 million remain on Velnara in 3 holdout cities. Jeho did the math in his head, math he didn't want to do. How many more can we evacuate? There was a pause before Deho answered. The fleet can make 4 more runs before the swarm overruns all remaining shield positions. That's roughly 8 million more we can save if we have enough time. And the other 5 million? Silence on the comm. Then quietly, we don't have the capacity. Even if we had time, which we don't. The weight of those words settled over everyone. They were choosing who lived and who died. Not through action, but through the simple mathematics of ships and time and distance. Scholar Tivanal, who had been listening from the evacuation fleet, spoke up. Your people are dying to save ours. Zhong Sang-hun gave his life. Li Hejin lost her leg yesterday. And now you tell us you cannot save everyone. Why does this cause you such distress? You have already saved more than anyone believed possible. Jeho's response was harsh. Because 67 million isn't everyone. Because we're supposed to protect people and we're failing 5 million of them. You are not soldiers. You told us this. You are researchers, engineers, scientists. Yeah, we are. But today we're what you've got. That night, something unexpected happened. Military Coordinator Breshik approached Jeho with a proposal. 5,000 Vela had volunteered for what they called a support mission. We still cannot fight, Breshik explained. Our biology prevents this. But we can pilot ships. We can operate shields. We can run decoy operations. Give us tasks that do not require violence, and we will match your sacrifice with our own. Jeho stared at the Vela coordinator. These peaceful aliens, traumatized by months of helplessness, had found their own way to fight back within their limitations. The plan came together quickly. 5,000 Vela volunteers would pilot automated ships loaded with heat and energy signatures. These decoy vessels would mimic evacuation transports. The swarm, following its heat-seeking and energy detection patterns, would pursue the decoys instead of the real evacuation ships. It was a suicide mission. The Vela pilots would be overwhelmed when the swarm realized the deception, but it would buy time. Maybe enough time to save 8 million instead of 3 million. The 9 remaining humans would split into 3 teams, each defending a final holdout city to buy time for the actual evacuations. Engineer Bay Taman, listening from orbit, protested. There has to be another way. We can't just... We're not sacrificing anyone, Jeho interrupted. We're making a choice. Every person here, human and Vela, is choosing this. Honor that choice. The operation launched at dawn. The decoy fleet scattered in multiple directions and the swarm took the bait. Massive swarm forces peeled away from the holdout cities, pursuing what they thought were escaping evacuation ships. The 3 human teams dug into their final positions. Team Alpha defended the northern city of Tel Shara. Team Beta held the central city Kreshnal. Team Gamma fortified the southern city Velmora. Each team had maybe 6 hours of ammunition and explosives. The evacuations needed 8. We'll make it work, Jeho said simply. The battle that followed was brutal beyond description. Team Alpha used narrow canyon approaches to create choke points. They collapsed rock faces with carefully placed explosives. They ignited fuel stores to create walls of fire. Kim Yuri rigged an electromagnetic transmitter that confused swarm sensors, buying them 40 precious minutes before the swarm adapted. Team Beta faced the heaviest assault. Li Hejin, fighting on one leg with a prosthetic strut, anchored the defensive line. Daewon's improvised flamethrower created a barrier of fire that held back the tide. Dr. Nam performed battlefield medicine between shooting swarm units, saving Vela civilians who refused to evacuate without their families. Team Gamma had the worst position. Park Junho, leading that team, made the decision to abandon outer defenses and fall back to an ancient Vela library in the city center. They turned it into a fortress using thousands of years of Vela knowledge as improvised barricades. The irony wasn't lost on them, protecting the Vela's past to buy time for their future. 4 hours into the operation, the swarm began to recognize the decoy ships as fake. Swarm forces started returning toward the holdout cities. The 5,000 Vela volunteers made their choice. They deliberately crashed their decoy ships into swarm concentrations. Each impact created massive explosions, destroying thousands of swarm units and creating barriers of wreckage. Breshik transmitted before their ship impacted. We learned from humans that sacrifice is not weakness. It is strength. We may not be able to fight, but we can choose to matter. Tell the survivors we did not run. Not this time. 5,000 Vela died in minutes, but they bought the human teams another hour. Somehow, against impossible odds, they made it to 8 hours. Captain Deho's voice came through the comm, shaking with emotion. Final evacuation transport is away. All remaining Vela civilians are evacuated. Ground teams, you have permission to withdraw. But withdrawal wasn't possible. All 3 human positions were surrounded by millions of swarm units. Their ammunition was gone. Their defensive positions were failing. Team Beta went silent first. Dr. Nam's last transmission was calm. Hospital is overrun, we held. Tell Earth we did okay. Team Gamma followed minutes later. Park Junho's voice crackled through interference. Libraries breached. For what it's worth, the books were worth protecting. So were they. Team Alpha, Jeho's team, made their last stand on the rooftop of Tel Shara's government complex. Down to knives and improvised melee weapons, they fought hand-to-hand against the swarm tide. Kim Yuri stood back-to-back with Shin Woo-jin as the swarm climbed the walls. Not how I thought my research career would end. Better than a lab accident, Shin replied. Jeho activated his final explosive, a jerry-rigged antimatter containment failure from the ship's reactor samples. It would level several city blocks and take out hundreds of thousands of swarm units. His last words were simple. Captain, tell the Vela we're even. And tell Earth the flag never fell. The explosion was visible from orbit. Aboard the Taeguk Pioneer, the surviving crew members stood in silence. Of the original 47, only 22 remained. The evacuation fleet, carrying 75 million Vela survivors, began its journey to the outer moon colonies. Captain Daiho sat in his command chair, staring at the planet below. Felnara was dead now, completely consumed by the swarm. Engineer Bay Taman approached quietly. 25 of our people are gone, Bay said. More than half. And 75 million are alive because of them, Daiho replied. The math works. It has to work. He didn't finish the thought. If the math didn't work, if those 25 deaths meant nothing, then what was the point of any of it? But he knew the truth. The math did work. 25 humans had bought 75 million Vela their lives, and 5,000 Vela had learned that they could fight in their own way, within their own limitations. The swarm still existed. It would eventually find the moon colonies. But today, 75 million people who should have died were still alive. Today, that had to be enough. 3 months after the fall of Velnara, the outer moon colony had a new name. The Vela called it New Hope. It was a somber name for a somber place. 75 million Vela lived there now, in hastily constructed habitats that covered the moon's surface. They were alive, but they had lost their homeworld, their ancient cities, and most of their people. The Taeguk Pioneer remained in orbit, damaged and running on auxiliary power. The 22 surviving crew members had spent 3 months helping the Vela build infrastructure and defensive positions. But everyone knew the truth. The swarm was still out there. It would find them eventually. The Vela built a memorial in the center of New Hope. It was a towering crystal structure that reflected light in patterns that somehow reminded people of human thoughts. Inscribed on it in both Vela script and Korean were the names of the 25 humans who had died defending them: Jong Sang-hoon, Lee Hyejin, Oh Dae-won, Dr. Nam Soo-bin, Park Junho, An Seo-jun, Kwon Mi-rae, and 18 others. Scholar Tivanal stood before the memorial and read an address to the assembled survivors. Thousands of Vela gathered to listen. We called into the void for salvation, Tivanal said. We expected gods, perhaps, or powerful warriors from ancient stories. What answered were beings smaller than us from a world so harsh it forged them in fire and crushing gravity. They called themselves human. They called their world Earth, and they taught us something profound. Tivanal paused, looking at the names on the memorial. They taught us that the capacity for violence and the capacity for compassion are not opposites. They are two sides of the same coin called choice. We cannot become them. Our biology prevents it. But we can remember them. We can honor their sacrifice by surviving, by thriving, by ensuring that the 75 million of us who live do so with purpose. Captain Deho attended with his remaining crew. They wore black bands on their uniforms. When the Vela asked why humans marked death with darkness, Communications Officer Park Ji-won explained, "Because grief is heavy. We wear it visibly so no one forgets the weight." 3 weeks after the memorial ceremony, something changed. Long-range sensors detected multiple vessels entering the system. Not swarm, ships, different designs, different energy signatures. They were responding to the distress broadcast sent 3 months ago. The first to arrive was a massive dreadnought that dwarfed the Taeguk Pioneer. Its hull was scarred from countless battles. The ship hailed them in a language the translation software struggled with, but eventually managed. "We received your broadcast. We know the swarm. They consumed one of our colony worlds 70 cycles ago. We have been hunting them ever since. We are the Threll. We come to fight." Over the next few days, more ships arrived, 7 different species in total, each responding to humanity's call for help. The Threll were warriors from a high-gravity world similar to Earth. Their commander, War Leader Thromskal, explained that they had been fighting the swarm for decades. The Corvini were beings made of energy who could disrupt swarm hive communications. The Drool Collective were cybernetic organisms whose technology could match swarm adaptation. The Silthrin were aquatic beings with advanced biological weapons research, and 3 other species, each bringing their own unique capabilities. Captain Daiho met with the alien commanders in a hastily arranged council chamber on New Hope. Through translation devices, they shared information. What Daiho learned was both hopeful and horrifying. The galaxy was full of life. Hundreds of species existed across thousands of worlds, but most of them were like the Vela, peaceful species who had evolved without the capacity for violence. The swarm had been consuming its way through the galaxy for centuries, targeting these peaceful civilizations. Billions had died. The few species who could fight, the Deathworlders as they were called, didn't respond to distress calls because they rarely received them. The peaceful species sent their pleas only to nearby systems. They never broadcast far enough. "Your species did it correctly," War Leader Thromskal explained through the translator. His voice was like grinding stones. "You sent the call wide, far-reaching, persistent, and you included proof that someone was fighting back. Most distress calls we receive are from dead worlds. Yours showed survivors. That changes everything." A representative from the Drool Collective added more. "You have also revealed something else. You humans had never encountered aliens before this, correct?" "Correct," Deho confirmed. "You could have left. The Vela meant nothing to you. No treaties, no shared history, no strategic value, yet you stayed and died for strangers. That defines character." The council meeting continued for hours. By the end, they had formed something new. They called it the Sentinel Alliance, the first multi-species coalition dedicated to protecting peaceful civilizations from the swarm and other existential threats. Each species brought their strengths to the alliance. The Vela offered their advanced technology, energy shields, faster than light communications, biological sciences. The Deathworlder species offered military expertise. Species with unique abilities contributed what they could. Humanity was given a specific role: rapid response and tactical innovation. Captain Deho was invited to become Admiral Deho, commanding the Alliance's first response fleet. He declined the promotion but accepted the position. "We're still just explorers who had to learn to fight. We're not ready to lead," Scholar Tivanal responded gently. "That humility is precisely why you should. Leadership is not about wanting power. It is about accepting responsibility when it is necessary." Captain Deho consulted with his crew and sent a long-range message back to Earth. The message would take 4 months to arrive, but it needed to be sent. "We are the crew of Taeguk Pioneer. We found aliens. We found horror. We found heroes among our own people who gave everything. And we found that humanity has a place in this galaxy, not as conquerors but as protectors. We request the following: send more ships, more people, and prepare Earth for what is coming. We are not alone anymore. For better or worse, humanity has been noticed." 6 months after the initial distress call, Earth's response arrived. A massive fleet of 30 vessels carrying 5,000 personnel, soldiers, engineers, diplomats, scientists. Leading them was Admiral Go Yunji, Earth's Defense Fleet commander. Admiral Go reviewed the tactical situation and met with the Alliance species. In a private meeting with Captain Deho, she was direct. "This is bigger than the Vela. The swarm is galaxy-wide. If we commit to this fight, Earth will be at war for decades, maybe centuries. We will lose people. Many of them. I know, Deho replied. And you still think we should do this? I think we don't have a choice. Not really. If we turn our backs now, we are saying those 25 people died for nothing. We are saying that when someone cries for help, we only answer if it is convenient. Admiral Go nodded slowly. That is what I told the council. They agreed. Humanity is committed. We will hunt the swarm to the last hive cluster if that is what it takes. 1 year after the initial distress call, the Sentinel Alliance launched its first major offensive. They targeted the swarm's primary hive world in the outer expanse, using intelligence gathered from multiple species. The fleet included vessels from 9 species. Humanity contributed 12 ships, a small fraction of the force, but their tactical doctrines made them invaluable. Captain Deho commanded the UESS Indomitable, a new ship built specifically for Alliance operations. With him were survivors from the original Taeguk Pioneer crew and new personnel from Earth. Among the new crew was Lieutenant Kang Minji, his daughter. She had volunteered specifically to serve under her father. You showed the galaxy who we are, she said when he questioned her decision. Someone has to continue showing them. Might as well be family. The battle for the swarm hive world lasted 3 weeks. It was brutal and costly, but the Alliance won. The hive world was destroyed, and an estimated 40 billion swarm units were eliminated. The victory came at a price. 1,200 Alliance personnel died, including 87 humans. 3 ships were lost entirely, but they had proven something crucial. The swarm could be beaten. Scholar Tivanal broadcast a message after the battle that reached across dozens of star systems. We are the Vela. 1 year ago, we faced extinction. We called for help and Deathworlders answered. Today we won our first battle against the swarm. To any peaceful civilization listening, you are not alone. The Sentinel Alliance stands between you and extinction. And if darkness comes for you, know this: calling for help is not weakness. It is the first step to survival. The message spread across the galaxy, and in the darkness between stars, other civilizations heard it and felt something they had not felt in a long time. Hope. 5 years after the first distress call, Captain Kang Deho stood in the observation deck of the UESS Indomitable. Outside the viewport, over 200 ships from 15 different species patrolled in coordinated formations. The Sentinel Alliance had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Deho had accepted a promotion to Admiral after all, though he still felt uncomfortable with the title. He preferred to think of himself as a coordinator, rather than a commander. But the Alliance needed structure, and Earth had proven itself capable of providing it. The Vela had recovered, at least partially. They now numbered 80 million across 3 colony worlds. They would never be what they were before, but they were alive. They contributed technology and scientific research to the Alliance. Their energy shields protected Alliance ships. Their communication systems connected the entire network. Scholar Tivanal joined Deho at the viewport. The Vela had become something like a friend over the years, though the concept of friendship between species was still new to both of them. I have been researching human history, Tivanal said. Your species has done terrible things. Wars that killed millions, genocides, atrocities that make me weep when I read about them. I know, Deho replied quietly. We are not proud of all of it. But that same capacity, that potential for darkness, is what saved us. The duality of your nature is what makes you remarkable. You can choose violence when necessary, but you prefer peace. That choice is what defines you. Deho considered this. Over 5 years of working with alien species, he had come to understand humanity's unique position in the galaxy. They were not the strongest species. The Threll were better warriors. They were not the smartest. The Drool Collective had more advanced technology, but humans had something special: the ability to choose between their worst instincts and their best ideals. We are still learning, Deho said. The Alliance helps, having something to protect beyond ourselves. It is changing us, making us better. You have changed us too, Tivanal replied. We have started training Vela in what we call passive resistance tactics, ways to impede enemies without direct violence. We are finding our own way to fight within our limitations. You taught us that we are not helpless. We are just different. A communication came through the ship's systems. Communications Officer Park Jiwon's voice, older now but still sharp. Admiral, we are receiving a distress call. 3 Vela colony ships detected it. The Rithali civilization is facing ecological collapse in the next sector. They are asking for help. Deho looked at Tivanal. Ready to pay it forward? Always. The Alliance had responded to 17 distress calls over 5 years. They had saved 4 civilizations from the swarm. They had helped 3 others with different crises: ecological disasters, technological failures, first contact situations that went wrong. The galaxy was a dangerous place and peaceful species needed protection, but it was exhausting work. The Alliance lost ships regularly. Personnel died in combat. Earth sent more people every year, but the casualties mounted. Humanity had lost over 3,000 people in 5 years of Alliance operations. Every name was recorded. Every death was mourned. And every time humanity kept answering the calls. As the Indomitable prepared to jump to the Rithali system, Daiho walked through the ship's memorial hall. It was a long corridor lined with holographic displays. Each display showed the name and image of an Alliance member who had died in service. He stopped at the original 25. Jong Sang-un, Lee Hye-jin, Oh Daewon, Dr. Nam Subin, Park Junho. The faces looked back at him, frozen in time. They had been the first, but they were far from the last. His daughter Minji found him there. She had been with the Alliance for 4 years now. Rising to the rank of commander, she had her mother's eyes and her father's determination. Thinking about them? She asked. Always, Deho replied. Every decision I make, I think about whether they would approve. Whether their sacrifice meant something. It did. Look what they started. Minji gestured at the ship around them. 200 ships, 15 species, 40 inhabited worlds under protection. That is what they bought with their lives. And 3,000 more dead since then. When does it end? Maybe it does not end, Minji said. Maybe this is just what we do now. Maybe humanity's purpose in the galaxy is to be the ones who answer when others call for help. The jump to the Rithali system took 6 hours. When they arrived, they found a species facing environmental disaster rather than military threat. The Rithali had accidentally triggered a runaway chemical reaction in their planet's atmosphere. They had the intelligence to understand what was happening, but lacked the technology to stop it. The Alliance spent 3 weeks working to stabilize the Rithali atmosphere. Human engineers worked alongside Drool technicians and Vela scientists. The Corvini used their energy manipulation abilities to disperse toxic clouds. The Threll provided heavy equipment and raw labor. It was not glamorous work. There were no battles, no heroic last stands. Just hard technical problem-solving that required cooperation between species who thought in fundamentally different ways. But when the Rithali atmosphere finally stabilized, saving a population of 6 billion, the gratitude was overwhelming. The Rithali joined the Alliance immediately, offering their skills in atmospheric science and chemical engineering. This is what we are building. Admiral Go told Deho during the return journey. She had joined the Alliance fleet 2 years ago, commanding the 2nd Response Group. Not just a military force, a community, a network of species who help each other. That is what the Vela wanted from the beginning, Deho said. They just could not build it themselves. They needed someone to start it. They needed you. They needed humanity. Deho shook his head. They needed anyone with the capacity to fight and the willingness to help. We just happened to be the ones who answered first. The Indomitable returned to Alliance headquarters at New Hope. The Vela colony had grown into a thriving settlement, the center of the Alliance's operations. Ships from dozens of species came and went constantly. Trade flourished. Cultural exchange programs helped species understand each other. It was not perfect. There were misunderstandings, conflicts over resources, philosophical disagreements about tactics and strategy. But it worked. Slowly, imperfectly, but it worked. Deho stood at the viewport one last time before his shift ended. He thought about the question that had haunted him for 5 years. Was it worth it? Were 3,000 human lives worth saving millions of aliens they had never met? He thought about Jong Sang-hoon, who died collapsing a hive cluster. He thought about Lee Hye-jin, who fought on one leg. He thought about Dr. Nam, who healed and killed with equal dedication. And he thought about the 80 million Vela who were alive because humans chose to answer a distress call. The 6 billion Rithali who avoided extinction because the Alliance existed. The dozens of other civilizations who slept safely because someone patrolled the darkness. Yes, it was worth it. Communications Officer G1 transmitted a message back to Earth, a routine report that had become tradition. This is UESS Indomitable, Alliance First Response Fleet. We have successfully assisted the Rithali civilization. Another distress call answered. Another species saved. The crew is ready for the next call. The Alliance stands strong. We remember those who started this. We remember the 25. Admiral Kang sends his regards. Earth, we continue to make you proud. Indomitable out. The message traveled across light years, reaching Earth 4 months later. When it arrived, people gathered in memorial halls to listen. They read the names of the dead. They celebrated the victories. And they sent more ships, more people, more resources, because humanity had found its purpose in the galaxy. Not as conquerors or explorers, though they were those things too, but as protectors. As the ones who answered when someone called for help. 5 years ago, aliens had cried for help. And the ones who answered were Deathworlders from a harsh planet, who knew how to fight but chose to protect. That choice made all the difference. In the vast expanse of space, on 1,000 different worlds, civilizations looked up at the stars. Some were peaceful, unable to defend themselves. Some were strong but alone, and all of them knew one thing. If they called for help, someone would answer, because humanity had answered once, and that changed everything.